Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gray, and this is another episode of the Gray F podcast. And today, my guest is Paul Dinin, who was already here on episode number 17, but we actually had to call him back because some of you guys have been emailing me, telling me about you looking at the cryptocurrency, what's going on in there, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but you don't fully understand it. So you guys asked if I can bring somebody in who knows better about this, and then we can all learn. So I have to say I'm not an expert in cryptocurrency myself. That's why I had to call Paul, because he knows better. Then we talk about cryptocurrency as a concept on its own, and then we break it down to all these nitbits that makes it. So if you've been wondering about cryptocurrency, you don't understand it, or you know a little bit about it, or you know about Bitcoin, but you just don't get it, that you can be able to do anything about it, even though you've been hearing about the news or you've been seeing it a lot online or something like that, then this podcast is definitely for you. What I did was I tried to ask Paul very close questions so that the average person out there who is not familiar with this technology can understand it. So I tried to sort of position it that we can break it down to as simpler terms as possible. So for those who are already experts in the crypto space, then I should say then this is probably not the right podcast for you. But if you're new, you don't really know a lot about it, you still want to learn it, then definitely this is the right thing. Then we talked about other things like Paul's troubled childhood, and some Tinder things came in, and other unrelated things. But some of it I'm actually embarrassed to keep it in. I wish I could just edit it out. But as a principle to this podcast, I told myself to keep it raw, as authentic as possible, so there's no chance to remove it or edit it out. But I have to point out that some of the things that I said in this podcast were to make a point on what I was talking about. So I don't recommend any of that, and I'm not liable for anything that I said, especially regarding to BitTorrent. We talked about BitTorrent. It came up in the conversation. So please do not take any of that stuff as a recommendation. I was just giving you my life experience and what I know so that we can make a point, because we're talking about technology here. And also remember, this is not financial advice or anything like that. We're just trying to give this information or have a conversation, then we can all learn together. And also, it sounded like this is not my podcast at all. It sounded like Paul owns this podcast, because he has a very overpowering voice, which I'm actually embarrassed by. So you just have to understand that it's still me interviewing him, not him interviewing me. It's just that he has a very strong voice that I have, which, it's quite embarrassing. I thought that I had the best voice, but unfortunately, doesn't sound like it. But thanks for streaming or downloading, listening, and I just have to give a spoiler alert and an apology for the strong language used in this podcast. But like I said, this podcast is uncensored. I try to keep it as authentic as possible, so I don't really edit anything out. And if you have something to say, you can put it in the comments. Also, you can email me to tell me what kind of subjects you would want to hear on this podcast. You're totally welcome to do that. Other than that, enjoy my podcast with Paul Dinin.
Oh, are we starting?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Gray. How's it going?
Good, man. Can't complain. You sound very loud. Your levels are picking.
Really?
On the waves, yeah. But that's cool.
It's because I'm projecting.
Yeah.
And I'm an American. I naturally speak very loudly.
Yeah, but you're not from New York, are you?
I am originally from ATL, Georgia. What can we do for you?
Right.
But I claim New York because nobody knows where Atlanta is.
I know where Atlanta is.
Well, it's because you're an intelligent, worldly guy.
Right.
And I don't know.
But Americans from New York probably don't know where Atlanta is.
They've heard of it, 1996 Olympics. Kerry Strug stole the nation's heart.
Yeah. What else to know about it besides?
Well, kind of what you're drinking over there.
Oh, is it Coke?
Coca-Cola, sure. Outkast,
Right.
Aquemini, greatest hip hop album of all time.
You listen to love albums?
We could play it right now. I listen to Ghostface's love album, sure.
Do you listen to love music?
You know, generally no. I think I mostly listen to like what I would call like cocaine disco. So just like kind of like 70s Italian disco that makes you want to wear big glasses and like do cocaine and like suck David Bowie's dick. I don't know, whatever they did in those days.
Inspector North, what is on your screen right now?
Oh shit! Well, we could go through my. Oh look, we can go right to the.
Jay Dilla, 90s hip hop.
Little Jay Dilla. We go right to the cocaine disco playlist if you like.
Yeah, sure.
And oh shit. Let's see here. Got a little Giorgio Moroder.
Is that the name of your playlist?
Yeah, the playlist is Cocaine Disco. I'll happy to share it with anybody.
Yeah, sure. On Spotify.
That's on. Yeah, if you're on Spotify,
I'll leave the link in the description.
There. Go ahead and look for Cocaine Disco on Spotify. And some of them get really, really gay too. Like towards the end of my list, like it gets to be some real like what we got. Anything, Sylvester, Menergy. I don't know.
Do you have some gay tendencies?
No, I don't. But God bless them. I do love the music. They make a good beat.
Right.
Some of the best beats out there. Just somehow sing a lot about dudes in it. So
right. Let's get into crypto because that's what this episode is about. So the last time we talked about cryptocurrency was specifically Bitcoin, and a lot of people are still confused. They don't really understand what it is still. But for somebody who want to understand Bitcoin specifically, I think they can go back to that podcast and get into it. But now let's talk about. I want to approach this a little bit systematically now to get it straight out there. So let's break it down on cryptocurrency. But before we get there, because I think one of the things that allows Bitcoin or cryptocurrency to work now is the peer-to-peer sharing, right?
Right. It's a peer-to-peer system.
Yes. So before we get there, one of the most common uses of peer-to-peer sharing or system is BitTorrent. Was one of the first that took it out there, which most people are familiar with. If they're not, you want to explain what BitTorrent is?
Well, I mean, I'm not the experts on all things bit related, but BitTorrent is ultimately a protocol for sharing files amongst each other, so that there's no centralized source of a file. If I go to a website and download a file, it's my computer communicating with another computer, the server, that sends a file from, I request a file, it sends it from point A to point B. Server being point A, me being point B. With BitTorrent, it's another peer-to-peer file sharing. I send a request out for a particular file, and the network relays that to multiple people who all have copies of the same files, and multiple computers that have copies of the same file, and I get bits and pieces of the file from all sorts of different sources.
Right. Okay. So, I've been a very big torrent person in the last couple of years.
Are you going to say that out loud?
Out loud. Yeah.
Wow, you don't give a shit about the record industry.
I really don't give a shit. I rip movies. Most of my education actually came from BitTorrent because I couldn't afford a lot of these overpriced universities.
Right.
I had to download shit for free, tutorials, books, whatsoever. And I still do, to be honest with you.
Good.
So it's more like a rebellious against the system, almost, of where we can share information for free. For people who don't know, if you download BitTorrent in your computer as a piece of software, or it's also on Android now, yeah?
Yeah, there's lots of different implementations of it.
So you can actually go there, and there are websites where you can download free movies, free software, whatever you can.
Right.
And
but only educational stuff. No downloading the latest Pirates of the Caribbean, because that that information doesn't want to be free.
Yeah, but you can still download whatever is there, Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's just I'm not recommending it.
Just make sure you already have a legally purchased DVD of it. And you're just downloading this as a backup.
And by the way, I'm not recommending anything. I'm just saying what actually happens, what works. So that's one of the ways I've used BitTorrent to get free movies, get whatever. I mean, I'm just being honest. So now, using the same kind of approach, I think that's where cryptocurrency comes in. Yeah. So let's talk about crypto on its own. Without let's talk about what is it? Is it cryptology?
Cryptography?
Cryptography. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're kind of putting my my limited tech skills to the test here. But cryptography is a way of encoding information so that only a specific person or other entity can actually read it, and it can be transmitted between the two without anyone else being able to just look at the data and know what it is. Yeah. All of my friends who are much smarter about this stuff than me, please forgive me on this. But it's used in every facet of our lives. Anytime you go to your bank's website and log in, it'll say HTTPS up in the top of your screen instead of it just HTTP. That's encryption at work there. That's making certain that the information that you transmit to your bank server between your computer or your phone to the bank server is encrypted in transit so that anyone who sees it along the way can't read it.
So it's basically, you can say, I'm trying to share something only to specific people or a specific person. Right.
In a sense, it's saying, I'm going to take let's say a word, right? A series of characters, and I'm going to change this one to this character, and this one to this character, and this one to that character, and this one to that character. This one's going to be +4 characters. This one's going to be -4 characters. Blah blah blah. And only you ostensibly have the key to be able to determine what the unencrypted message actually is.
Yes.
So that's a very, very simplified third grade explanation of it.
Yeah, I hope everyone understands that. So
if not, go ahead and download something about it from BitTorrent.
Yeah. Perfectly, yeah. BitTorrent has pretty much everything. But so BitTorrent now is struggling because of the websites that you can use to share the files. BitTorrent is what you can use to download the torrents, the content. So that means I can upload some. I don't need to have a server to put some of my files online. That can be a movie, a book, or whatsoever. So we used to have websites. It's piracy at its at its best. So you get free stuff, yeah. So what used to happen, for example, we used to have the Pirate Bay, BitSnoop and all these guys. Some of them crashed; they don't work anymore.
Yeah, it used to. No, all those were trackers, right? Yeah. So that was just
yes, that's the correct.
Those are just ways of
accessing.
Ways of showing your BitTorrent client who has the information you're looking for. So if you're looking for a specific file, or it was just a way of organizing that information, but it's not, it's those sites get shut down a lot because at the end of the day they're centralizing something that's inherently not centralized. So they're centralizing it with a website. Well, once you set up a website, that website can be shut down. That website has servers. That website has single points of failure that can be, attacked by the Motion Picture Association of America or the recording industry or lawyers or whoever else. And so that's why those sites get shut down or, turned off, turned on. But ultimately, BitTorrent's been around for, 15 years at least now, more. And BitTorrent, the protocol I don't think it's ever been stronger. I mean, I don't think, I'm just pulling statistics right out of my ass, but I'm pretty sure that's still, the BitTorrent accounts for a large bulk of the total traffic on the web. Yeah. Even still.
Yeah. Okay, so again, just to be clear here, we're not recommending we're not recommending downloading illegal stuff from the BitTorrents or from the torrent itself. What I'm trying to do is...
This is a pretty weak, like, cover your ass kind of moment for you. Especially you just spent the 5 minutes leading up to this telling them how great it was.
But I mean, I just have to say, it's out there. So obviously, if you're a university student, they can't tell you that because the system obviously doesn't want you to know that, that actually you can get a book for free when somebody can sell it to you, So I'm just making sure not anybody gets excited and,
Who's your lawyer, Gray? Who's your attorney? What law firm are you with?
I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, I'm not recommending anything. And I'm not an expert. I'm not a law expert. Nothing like that. I'm just saying what I know. So let's move on to cryptocurrency now.
Right.
Cryptocurrency, it's using the cryptography now to generate some kind of currency.
Well, it's called cryptocurrency because, like, at its core, it uses cryptography in order to be able to ensure that only the right person can access the money in it, the currency, right? So, when you create a Bitcoin address, or just about any cryptocurrency I can think of, you're actually creating. It actually comes down to two strings. One is a public address, and one is a private key. So it's asynchronous cryptography. So a public address can be seen by anyone, but you need a private key to be able to move funds off of that public address, right? So, and it does that through encryption and hashing all that stuff out. So that's why it's a core function of cryptocurrency is using cryptography to prove ownership of money.
Cool. So with that, I think then we have settled the idea. Anybody can sort of get it because we have covered cryptography and then now cryptocurrency. So in simple words, then we can say cryptocurrency uses cryptography to secure the currency, the money.
Right. But I would also argue, it's worth discussing it if you're going to break it down that way. We've discussed cryptography. Well, let's discuss what currency is too. Currency at the end of the day is just it's a store of value. Sometimes it's tough for us to think, would you get a little Tinder match?
No.
Let me see.
No, it's not.
Let's shut this whole thing down and see who's blowing you up on Tinder right now.
Man, it's not a Tinder match. Let's move on.
Grindr?
No.
All right.
Yeah, probably Grindr.
Currency is ultimately it's just a store of value, right? So most people say, okay, I've got rand, I've got dollar, I've got euro. They're so familiar with whatever the store of value that they know best of all, that they don't think of it in broader terms. Anything can be a store of value if you're willing to put value into it, right? If I've got 10 rocks lined up here on the desk, and we both agree that this rock is worth X amount of jelly beans, and this rock is worth X amount of jelly beans because they're about the same size, and this rock is worth Y amount of jelly beans because it's this color, and this rock is worth Z because it's that color. It's a store of value. Now, is it a good store of value? Probably not, because they're rocks, and we have an incalculable amount of them on this planet, and everyone can get more of them, and they're difficult to get everyone to agree on the value of, and they're difficult to send around. It's hard for me to pay for my online pornography. God, I don't know why that was the first thing that came up. It's hard for me to pay for something over the internet, with a rock. So, can it be a currency? Sure. Could it be a good currency? No, probably not. what are called fiat currencies are currencies that are given value by fiat or by order of a ruling power. In this case, that generally applies to currencies issued by countries. So South African rand is a fiat currency because the South African government says,
this is it.
This is what we're using. Okay. The U.S. dollar is, it's the ultimate fiat currency because not only does the U.S. government say this is what U.S. citizens are using, but it also kind of twists the arm of the world to say that you should also use this as kind of the global currency.
Yes.
Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general, they're also stores of value or a way to store value because once we both agree that it has value, but they're also really good stores of value in the sense that they're good currencies in the sense that I can secure them so that nobody else can take them. Unlike a rock, I got to keep my bag of rocks, in a desk somewhere, and somebody can take those, and I got to carry around X amount of rocks with me. Cryptocurrencies work as kind of a better form of currency because one, they can be secured. If done the right way, they can be secured to the point where no one can steal them.
Yeah.
And they're very they're very fungible. They're easy for me to send you cryptocurrency no matter where you are in the world. I can send it to you and it'll you'll have it and be able to spend it almost immediately. And the store of value, of course, comes from the floating exchange rate. So it just basically how much people believe in the value of it.
Yeah.
But from a technical standpoint, like cryptocurrencies are really a better form of currency. They're an advance in the technology of currency themselves.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. The cryptocurrency, with what you have explained now, one of the advantages that we can add is that it can be decentralized, right? That means nobody owns it. Not some sort of government or banks or a lawyer does have to control the currency, right? Or in terms of, as compared to fiat currency where the government can print more money, I think that's where cryptocurrency differs from the norm or the usual currencies that we use, right?
Yes. Well, there can be rules set up, within the code of a cryptocurrency. Those rules can be set to do whatever you want. Those rules can be set to automatically, create X amount of new amounts of currency, every 5 minutes if you want it to, every second if you want it to. It could be made so that X amount of every transaction gets sent to a government address or whatever. There's a lot of things you can do with it. But the point is you can set those rules, and so you can let we can collectively let those people determine which one they want to use based on the rules of it. So they can say, I like this set of rules. I like that Bitcoin has only 21 million coins. X amount are made. I know exactly how many there will ever be at any given time, and I like that I can see all the transactions, and I like this and I like that and whatever. With something like Ethereum, they can look at the rules and say, I like that I can do this, that, whatever with it. So,
right.
It's kind of letting the market decide. It's kind of letting the market decide in a sense, which is a better way to manage. Which is a better money system people want to be attached to.
Absolutely. Where you have a choice. I think with your set of ethics or morals, whatever you can call it.
Did you say my morals?
No. Yeah, could be yours.
God, no. No, sir.
It's like you can sort of decide based on what you believe in or how you think, in which or sort of mode of currency you want to be involved with. Now we have a few blockchains now, right? So you can sort of choose like which one do you want to use. For example, you can say I want to use the dollar, I want to use the rand, or I want to use the Australian dollar, but still being in the same country. I think that allows for that kind of choice as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you believe in a particular implementation of a cryptocurrency more than you believe in another one, then you can, put your vote behind that by keeping your value in it.
And that you make that decision, not the government saying that this is the currency that we're supposed to use.
That's true.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was trying to
yes.
Apply. Yeah. So now let's move to blockchain.
Okay.
Yeah, what is blockchain?
Blockchain is one of those phrases that kind of annoys the piss out of me. Not because only because it's kind of being abused right now by people who I feel don't completely understand it. One of the like more interesting innovations with Bitcoin is that it's ultimately a ledger, right? So it's a series of packages of transactions that goes on forever, and it's a
shared ledger, right?
It's a shared ledger, right? So whereas with a ledger exists at your bank too, right? And that bank says, there is no room at your bank that says all Gray's money is here. It's not like
a little box.
Yeah, there's not like a little. Well, look, I was going to give you the benefit of having a whole room, but okay, a little box. There's not a little box with Gray's with Gray's 8 nickels in it. There's not a little box that has your name on it, and when you buy something online, a troll goes to the box and like pulls out your nickels and then like hands it to another troll, and he walks down the hallway. It's all digital. It's all stored in a database, right? So when it's a ledger, but in this case, the bank controls that ledger, and you're trusting the bank to manage that ledger and do the right thing with it, and secure that ledger. So they have a ledger. One of the big innovations with Bitcoin is that it was a public ledger, so anyone can see what address has what money, what transactions have happened. It's trivially easy to trace money around it.
And more secure, as well, just to point that out, than the actual the ledgers that the banks use, because it's based on a server and a database, like a static database, as compared to a shared ledger where I guess it has its own history. I think that's one of the things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Bitcoin is pretty battle hardened. It's been around a long time, and everyone. I've heard people say, "Well, what if it got hacked?" Well, at this point, I mean, I think the whole Bitcoin ecosystem is worth I don't know, $15-20 billion. I don't know. This latest roundup is kind of something like that, which is not that much for a currency, but it's been around for 8-9 years now, and at the end of the day, the code base for it is totally public. And at the end of the day, if there were a way to break the core Bitcoin protocol, not only would there be a giant financial incentive for someone to do so, but it would be the feather in the cap of a giant feather in the cap of anyone who is able to do it. So it's very secure. If implemented the right way. We always hear about Bitcoin hacks and this and that, but those are from poor implementations of the Bitcoin protocol. The protocol itself is pretty battle hardened.
Right. So let's just get back to the ledger for the people to understand who probably because I don't want anybody to miss anything and ask me via email again.
You don't want them bothering you?
I'm not a cryptocurrency expert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I don't want to play that on the internet.
Gotcha.
So the ledger, when I was learning about Bitcoin last year, I remember reading something about, I think it was on, what website was that? I think I'll find it, I'll put it in the description, but it gave an example of Amazon. Oh, I'm sorry, of Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. Whereas you can sort of go on there and add your own information, and they will update the database. It updates the server, the database, and then you have the recent new version of that particular information. So Wikipedia isn't, it's not built by a number of people sitting in their office or there. It's like everybody can contribute to the information that we get from there, but they own it. So the banks the current system works in that way, right? Whereas the banks have their servers and whatever transaction I make to you, they're supposed to get involved to know what's going on, and then they can approve or deny it, right?
Sure. At the end of the day, a bank can, there's obviously laws in whatever jurisdiction that bank functions in order to be able to do business. So, there's practical restrictions on what they can do. But at the end of the day, sure, they have your account and they have access to everything you do with it, yes.
And for the database, basically what you do, you add or remove or change information in it on an actual database. A ledger, I think, if I give a comparison of an Excel sheet, is that correct?
Oh, what?
Excel sheet, like Excel,
Oh, an Excel.
An Excel sheet, is that correct?
So there was a accent misunderstanding. I thought you said an exo shit, which sounds amazing.
Right.
Sounds like something Carl Sagan.
I sort of understand it, but I'm trying to make it easier for somebody who is like,
I understand
technical. And
I'll stop joking.
No, that's okay. So if I give an example of an Excel sheet, that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Where you have on a database a box where you can set in information, but the ledger, the shared ledger, from what I read, it means it has its own history, so you cannot go there and just add information to it. It's like each node is controlled by. It's like you directly change each node from the information that you send to the server. Is that correct?
Well,
so I have my own sort of ledger that I can change, and I'm the only person who can change that.
No. Everyone shares the same ledger, so it's not a situation where you can just go back and change a transaction from 5 years ago.
Right.
Everybody has to agree that this is the same ledger we're all using. Otherwise, I mean, if you can go back and if you can send a transaction and then go and say, broadcast that out and then go say, just kidding, I want to take that transaction back.
So that there is always that problem with the current system of banks or whatever. PayPal, people do that. They buy something, they pay you, and they call PayPal and they say, "Look, I made a mistake. Cancel that transaction," and you don't.
Sure.
You don't have that money. So cryptocurrency solves that kind of problem, I guess.
Yeah. Well, cryptocurrency. I mean, this was kind of hotly debated for a while, but yeah, you can't. Practically, you can't. You can't rescind a transaction. At least with Bitcoin. So, and that's key to the, to the trust of the network, right? It's one of the key parts of making it a trustless form of currency. Now, like to give you an example, a credit card, right? So, a credit card is. I like to use the analogy that a credit card is basically like you're carrying around a box with all your money, or a debit card, let's say. You're basically carrying a box with all your money in it, and there's access to all your money, and it's got your name on the outside of it, and it's got the number of your account on the out of it, and it's got all the information you need, the password, it's got everything you need to access that, to access all your money, right? When you go to the store and buy something with it, you are ultimately handing that box to
the man on the counter.
To the cashier at the grocery store and saying, "Here you go, good fellow.
Yeah.
I trust you to take what I owe you out of that box."
Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, there's stuff in place to prevent something that stupid happening, but in a lot of cases, there's not. When you're buying stuff online, when you're if you're at a restaurant, you just hand the guy the card. At least in the U.S., it's very common. You just hand the person the card. They disappear with it.
Yeah.
Kind of come back with a receipt. So that's ultimately what you're doing with a debit card with the banking system. Now they put safeguards in place. Well, what they do is they say, okay, well, to prevent that from happening, your Visas and your MasterCards and your Amexes and your banks say, well, to prevent that from happening, we're going to promise you that anytime somebody, if there's a charge that you dispute, you don't think is correct, we will send that money back to you, right?
Yeah.
So we would take that, but they got to take that money from somewhere. So they take the money back from the merchant and give it back to you, right? So so now there's a system where both parties have to trust each other. I've got to trust, I'm a merchant. I've got to trust you not to buy something and then call up the bank and say this is bullshit.
Yeah.
You've got to trust me not to just take your information and charge whatever the hell I want and take as much money out of it as I want.
Yeah.
And the fact that to ensure that trust between each other and to deal with all the hassles that come from having to have that trust in that transaction, that's ultimately what banks and card networks, Visa, MasterCard, that's ultimately what they're charging for. They're charging to provide a service that their shitty model causes in the first place. Yeah. It's because it's a shitty model is why they get to charge you for it. So with cryptocurrencies, it's more of a cash-based system. I say, you tell me, it's more similar to cash in that you say, look, this is what this product costs. Here's where you send it to. So it's not, I don't hand you over a box and you take as much out as you want. Yes. You say, here's my address, send it to that address, and I send you exactly what I owe you, that amount.
Right.
And then we're done.
Right.
So there's no requirements of trust involved between the two parties.
Right. So the name, what were we covering just now again?
We were talking about being able to take money back, and we were talking about pornography, I think, for a second, and we were talking about your Tinder date that's blowing you up.
Oh, yeah, I've got so many of them.
Well, you're a handsome guy. Look, I don't blame him.
So, blockchain. When I was learning last year after we did the first podcast, I've been trying to understand it as just a form of currency, a different currency, like say Japanese yen.
Yeah. It's not. So a blockchain is what, as opposed to having a centralized database, it's what cryptocurrencies work off. So it is a series of bundles of transactions, right?
Okay, so first of all, is Bitcoin a blockchain?
Yes, there is a Bitcoin blockchain. Okay. Yes.
So what is Bitcoin on its own?
Well, Bitcoin is Bitcoin is a name for this particular blockchain.
Right. Okay. So to make it simple for myself, I understand what you're about to get into, but my understanding was I just look at it as one of the currencies available, kind of like the US dollar or the rand, because there are other blockchains also available, like Ethereum, which is on the rise right now, right?
Right.
But obviously there's a technical thing to it, which you can explain now.
Right. Well, yeah, it's hard to explain a simplified version of why, or it's hard for me to explain a simplified version of why, of exactly how the blockchain works. But ultimately, you're looking at a kind of a series of packages of information that have X amount of transactions within them, and one is tied to one block is tied to the previous block, which is tied to the previous block, which is tied to the previous block, which is tied to the previous block, creating a chain of blocks. And to prevent someone from going back and changing a transaction from, say, 6 months ago, they would have to basically remine all of the blocks going all the way back to wherever that transaction was. So
does that take us back to the shared ledger?
Well, this is the shared ledger.
Yes.
Yeah, the blockchain ultimately is the shared ledger system. Right. So, but calling and the the blockchain is obviously a huge innovation. But when I hear people say oh, it's not about Bitcoin anymore, it's about blockchain, I'm like, okay, or when I read, or when I read someone say, "Oh yeah, blockchain is," I got to get into blockchain. It's like, no, it's a blockchain. It's like you wouldn't say, "Ooh, I got to get into database." You're like, no, it's a database. It's part of a larger system. It's a very important part, obviously. It's a very important technology, but it's a part of it's a component of a larger system. And what gets really abused sometimes is blockchains are basically just that, a large scale of, like, they're a decentralized database that everyone kind of collectively can manage, right? Which is incredible. Yeah. It's an incredible idea. It's incredible technology.
Doesn't that take away from the essential idea of cryptocurrency, where it has to be? It's like if you have a blockchain or blockchain, let's say Bitcoin. Do you think it kind of creates a version of what the banking system does?
It does, yeah.
It does, yeah.
And ultimately, like what with Bitcoin's blockchain, it ultimately becomes like this giant decentralized system of proving and transferring ownership. Whether that ownership is of something we call a coin, a currency, or whether that ownership is of medical records, or that ownership is of a vote. Yeah. That ownership is a property. And it's a pretty infallible way. I mean, nothing's infallible, but it's a pretty incredible way of, like, proving and transferring ownership of something in a decentralized fashion. But not everything needs to be decentralized, and a lot of times, like, it's right now we're kind of in this phase where everyone says, "Oh, blockchain, it's all about blockchain now," and it's like, okay, I don't think you completely understand what you're talking about. I'm excited that you're into it, but there's a lot of things that it would just be, you're just better off using a goddamn MySQL database for than or any kind of database, because it doesn't need all of the stuff that makes blockchains great. Like, it doesn't need to be trustless. It doesn't necessarily need to be decentralized. And if you insist on using a blockchain for everything just because that's the hot new phrase, then it seems kind of silly. But and this is coming from someone who is very much a believer in the technology and is awed by it. But it is getting abused right now for people who just want to raise some money for something, and they go, okay, what's the hot new word? Blockchain. Yeah, we're a blockchain company now. It's
it's a bubble where now people are just trying to get money from the VCs.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's trying to get there. Hey, fuck it. Who am I to judge a person for? Everybody's got to make a living. Get your hustle on.
So how do we make money? Okay, just put some words together and add blockchain to it. Somebody will be able to give you some money.
Somebody will give you 1.2 million if you just go in there with a good pitch and say blockchain. We might be a little past that now. Hopefully, we're a little bit past that, but I don't know.
VR is the same thing at the moment as well. It's just make some silly vaporware technology and.
Oh my God, VR blockchain! Holy shit! End this fucking podcast. Let's get to work now. Put together the pitch deck.
I think we can get something.
Somebody will give us something for that. There's a lot of idiots in this world. Yeah. We could definitely get some beer money off of that.
Actually, that's a good idea. Let's try that.
There you go. You can walk into the blockchain, explore the transactions with your hands, and oh yeah, look at that. Feel that hash, that hairy hash.
Yeah, you can see all the other cryptocurrencies from the side.
Right.
You can feel when Bitcoin is about to rise.
Yes, you can slowly stroke your Bitcoin wallet and just, it's delicious.
Right. So let's get to the front end now. Whatever we discuss here is kind of like the back end of the whole cryptocurrency thing, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the nuts and bolts.
Yes. Now, to the front end, somebody today would say, look, I want to go out there and invest in Bitcoin. And by the way, let's make something clear. Last year, by the time we did the podcast, I don't know if it was in September last year, Bitcoin was about 9,000 Rand. One Bitcoin was equal to 1,000 Rand. Today, it's about 37,000 Rand. if you put into the dollars now, that's about 2,700. I might be wrong.
Well, you do pretty good math.
Cool.
Yeah, it's about right.
I'm not as dumb as I think. And
it's a good thing you're handsome.
Right. More Tinder things.
More Tinder for you, yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. So
by the way, I don't even know what the Tinder "you have a match" sounds like. I think that's why I was so shocked when I heard that. First time I've ever heard that notification.
Oh, why did you just guess? I think you've heard it a couple of times on your phone.
Stop it.
No. Okay. So, okay, no Tinder anymore. I'm confused now. What I was about to ask now was that, so for somebody to go buy it now, they want to get into Bitcoin, but before we explain that whole process of wallets and how you can keep your coins, just explain the surge and the investments of Bitcoin at the moment, because it seems like it's a kind of a bubble a little bit, which is a good. I think Bitcoin is at a stage where it's kind of like a smart people game, people who actually understand the technology, the nuts and bolts, but it's closely getting to dumbasses like myself who can a little bit understand it and probably do something with it. So what has happened last year? The rise is like, I don't know the percentage wise, but it has risen, so it rose so much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been answering the question, should I buy Bitcoin right now?
Yeah.
I've been answering it the same way for years, which is I have no idea what's going to happen in the next
You always say that.
week. I have to, man, because there's nothing else for me to say. And if anyone's being honest with you, there's nothing else they can say either. I don't know what's going to happen in the next week. I don't know what's going to happen in the next month.
What has happened to you in the last 5 months?
I'm not. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 months. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 months. If you had asked me that same question, well, it was a year and a half prior when it was sitting around, I think, 1,000 US. And if I had said, yeah, you'll buy it to the moon, you would have been pissed at me for for about 18 months after that. So anyone who's being honest is not going to tell you, yes, go buy now, because they're not going to be able to tell you that what it's going to do in the next 3 months. That's not even applies to Bitcoin. That applies to any sort of tradable instrument like that. Nobody can tell you what the price of it is going to be tomorrow, and if they did, they wouldn't fucking tell you because they'd be too busy
making the money.
Yeah, taking all that value for themselves. Yeah. So, what I do believe in, though, is, and what I've said for years is, long term, I'm very much a believer in the technology, and the more uses the technology has, the more places it finds in everyday life, the more people who learn about it, it's, the value against fiat currencies is only going to go up because it's better than fiat currencies. Yeah. So in the long term, I obviously think it's very, very, very valuable, more valuable than it is right now.
But then what has happened to the surge, the increase in value?
Again, I don't know why it's gone up. I mean...
how much has it gone up?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, probably...
If we do the math, say, last September it was 9,000 Rand, which is now about 9,000 Rand.
It's gone up 400, it's gone up, 400% or so.
400%, yeah. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But you haven't thrown a party yet, bro. Come on.
I don't know who you think I am, man.
No, man, don't lie.
But yeah, no,
and you're very good at being modest, Paul, I have to say.
Look, I don't like trying to sell people into scams, and I don't like, and it's not so, and I don't like telling people what to do with their money. It's a really quick way to lose friends.
Yeah.
So, it's something that I personally believe in. And that's why I do, that's why I do your podcast, because I want other people to understand what they're doing before some jerk off comes along and says, you gotta invest in this, you gotta invest in that. Man, god damn! Look, I was at the airport about a month or so ago, and there was this jack off next to me wearing a certainly brand new, cheap looking polo shirt with a giant Bitcoin logo on the back of it.
Is it American?
No, South African and Afrikaans, and he was like talking on the phone, and he's blah blah blah. He's speaking very authoritatively about some, his cryptocurrency hedge fund, and they're making 40% a month, and it's hedged with mining, so it's this and that. This guy had no fucking clue what he was talking about.
Was he mansplaining?
What's that?
Was he mansplaining?
He was douche-splaining. Like he was talking down to the world. And but it sounds convincing if you didn't know the particulars of it. And I could see, by the end of the call, I think he had somebody agreed to give him, $70,000 or something like that. And for something that, 50-50, that person might make money but it won't be because that guy's so fucking smart. It's because the currency was going to go up with or without him.
But he will look really smart.
He'll look really smart. Oh god, and it disgusts me to think that he's going to get more money out of people. But yeah, and I hate seeing people like that. Kind of fast talk their way into shit. But again, who am I to hate the hustle? Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I would prefer that people like at least have some kind of understanding of what it is and know know what they're getting into, because it's money. It's your store of value. It's it's at the end of the day, it's what we exchange for food and shelter.
Yes, and if you want to buy Bitcoin now, how does it work? Because I think that's the most hard part for people to do. It's like, where do I actually get it? And then, if you want to keep it, where do you keep it? You hear all these stories about a flash drive. Oh, now you have to keep it offline, print it, and put in your suitcase. Like hide it away from your kids. All these stories. When you lose it, you never find it again. Whatever, the things like that.
Right. Well, I like to tattoo it on my taint, which is the area between my asshole and my balls. And then, but I do it backwards, so when I hold a mirror down there,
you can use your cell phone,
I can see. Yeah, exactly. Pop it into selfie mode. Sorry, Jesus, I'm really sorry about that. So, to ultimately to be able to accept Bitcoin or really any cryptocurrency, it kind of goes back to what we first talked about, which was that public address, that private address, that encrypted pair of the public address and private key is that just encrypted pair. You can write out the math that actually creates that pair on a piece of paper if you want to.
Oh, but look, let's take it systematically. First person from the streets right now want to buy coin.
Okay, so I was going to try and build that up from the seed of an idea and then implement it. But you know what? You're right. Let's
start it from the top, then we go all the way down.
You want to buy, the easiest way to do it is there's companies now, even here in South Africa, quite a couple of them now in South Africa that will sell you Bitcoins ultimately. So they will give you all of the tools you need to be able to trade Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, trade it, and more importantly, exchange your rand for Bitcoin, and vice versa. So you can go to Luno is the big one, Luno.com. They used to be called BitX, and you can go to Luno. Oh shit, is it Luno or Lumo? That was kind of a weird name choice because I'm never sure if it's Luna or Lumo or Luna. Let me double check this first. They probably spent a lot of money on that name. I'd hate to get it wrong. Yeah, Luno. Okay. Luno. I always screw that one up.
luno.com, yeah?
Yeah, luno.com. They used to be called bitx.co.za. So you can go to a company like Luno.
So Luno is a wallet in this blockchain category, right?
They're a company that provides all sorts of Bitcoin services. Yeah, so they're going to give you a wallet. They're going to give you access to an exchange where you can trade bitcoins, and they're going to, they're all, they're a web-based wallet. So they hold, your private keys, they hold your address. You're actually kind of re-centralizing your Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was about to say.
You're centralizing it on their servers.
Yeah. So they're pretty much like Visa or MasterCard.
They're kind of like a bank, but without some of the overhead of a bank, and also, more importantly, without the regulations surrounding a bank. So if you keep your money with Luno, Luno is, as I can see, certainly the best option in South Africa. And it's Coinbase in the U.S. and there's companies like this all over the world now.
And also I use Coinbase, and it's just like Luno, but it's an American company. So you have trouble because they say we don't allow this in your country at the moment. Right.
Well, it's because they are trying to follow regulations because at the end of the day they're exchanging money. So and that's kind of that's the part of the system that governments are cracking down on, because they can't really crack down on the protocol. Yeah. It's the same thing with like BitTorrent, right? Like BitTorrent versus Pirate Bay.
The technology itself.
They can come down on the Pirate Bay because they can't do anything really about BitTorrent.
Yeah.
So they can come down on Luno or Coinbase or whomever, or companies doing business with it, because they can't really do a whole lot about the actual protocol, the currency itself, right? So if you just want to buy some, your first go around, you go to, like if you're in South Africa, you go to Luno and set up an account with them. It's very quick, it's very easy. And then you purchase Bitcoin using Rand. I believe you can just hook up your South African bank account with them. It takes, they verify who you are. For anti-money laundering and know your customer laws, and they verify who you are, and then you can EFT money from your bank account to Luno, and at a set rate, and they put Bitcoin in your wallet.
Cool. It's as easy as that, right? So what's the other alternative of buying Bitcoin? You can also buy it from the black market, just from your friend.
Sure. Well, yeah. If you want to call,
how does that work?
If you want, well, again, we're not. I like to think of it more of exchanging, right? Yeah. I'm not buying Bitcoin from you. If I had $1 and you had whatever it is, 13 Rand, and I needed some Rand, we would exchange money, right?
We're not buying,
Yeah, I'm not buying Rand from you. I mean, I am, but still, So we're exchanging money. So it's kind of the same thing with this. You're exchanging money like you would at an airport, and of course, if you're the one coming to them, there's gonna be a fee for that exchange. But you're exchanging money at a particular rate, whatever the rate is at that, at that moment. So,
so say I'm buying it from you. What's the process? How does it work? If I'm buying from another individual,
the process between you and me is we agree on how much you want. We just have to agree on it. So you say, I want 500 Rand worth of Bitcoin, and I say, okay. We agree that this is the rate. We'll look at a bunch of different exchanges or whatever. Maybe we look at Luno's exchange rate and we say, okay, Luno's exchange rate says 39,502 Rand per Bitcoin. You want to buy, let's make it easy for ourselves here. You want to buy 400 Rand worth of Bitcoin. So that's, that's 0.01 Bitcoin. So give me the 400 Rand. And that makes a little profit for me. And, you give me the 400 Rand, I send you 0.01 Bitcoins.
Yeah. And can you keep it on paper as well? How does that whole process work?
Sure. Well, you have to have a wallet. You have to have a public address, right? So, or you have to have that Bitcoin address, and you can get that. You can download Bitcoin wallets that are unattached to companies. You can program your own, actually, surprisingly easily. And so I can. There's a lot of ways you go about it. One, I can initiate a transaction from my Bitcoin address to the address that you just gave me, and within 10 minutes you should have a confirmation that it's in a block and it's there to you, and within ultimately within 30 minutes you'll be able to spend that somewhere else. Or yeah, if we don't even want to send the transaction, if I just have 0.01 Bitcoin in a wallet, I could literally just hand you the private key and say, you know, as long as you trust me not to like remember what that private key was or have it written down somewhere else, you know, ultimately you now have control over that money.
Right. What do you personally use?
For what?
Or as your wallet?
You know, I have a Luno address.
Right.
You know, you program your own. There's a lot of different ways you can do it.
But what do you use?
You know, I still use some of the old like Bitcoin core wallets. So
Coinbase?
No.
Why
not anymore. I've used some of them before. I've used a lot of them before. But yeah, I've had a Coinbase. I've had, you know, you can have addresses at all of them. It's free. I can set up 1 million addresses right now. You know, everyone in the world could create 1 million Bitcoin addresses every day.
Right.
For, I don't know what the number is, for the next, you know, 10 million years, and we wouldn't run out of addresses.
So we have Bitcoin, and we have other blockchains as well. A lot of them now. But among the rising up now, we have Ethereum.
Right.
What's the difference between the two?
I can't claim to be a total expert in Ethereum, but you know, Ethereum is ultimately
so just to the audience,
it's ultimately a block. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was about to say to the audience to understand. So just think of it. If you think of Bitcoin as US dollar, think of Ethereum as, say, a Canadian dollar or something like that, right? Is that correct? But with different technologies.
No, because ultimately the US dollar and the Canadian dollar are the same thing, just issued by different people.
Okay, so say the US dollar and the Japanese yen.
No, that's the same example too. So Ethereum is tough to explain, and honestly, it took me a long time to get my head around it as well. But you remember how we said that you can write your own rules for your blockchain, right? Yeah. So you can write whatever rules you want on it. You can make those rules as complex as you want, or as simple as you want.
Isn't that centralizing? Isn't that centralizing?
Well, centralizing to that blockchain.
Okay.
But ultimately, it still works on a distributed level, right? So you can write rules for a blockchain, right? Bitcoin actually has a very limited amount of rules that you can do with it. You can attach a little bit of information to any transaction, but the actual, I mean, it has a scripting language, but like the actual, it's pretty simple. Ethereum is this really grand idea of having a blockchain that you can, with a pretty complex scripting language on top of it, basically. So you can write all sorts of rules. You can create contracts, if this, that, you know, kind of ideas that say, okay, well, when this transaction happens here, then complete this other transaction over here, and this and that, whatever. So there's all sorts of rules that you can stack on top of this blockchain, which is kind of mind-blowing.
So does that mean on your money that you have with Ethereum, you can set rules to what it does, or what does that mean?
Well, that means you can kind of set rules within the Ethereum blockchain that other people can then participate in. Yes.
Oh, so kind of like making your own, like a sub-currency?
Sure.
Right.
Sure, but with it, but you know, it still has to work within it works within a set of rules that you kind of develop. And again, I'm probably mangling this because I've never really like been good at explaining it to other people. There's some really great Ethereum meetup groups in Cape Town that I strongly recommend you go to, because there are some super smart guys at those groups who will give you probably a better explanation of Ethereum. But ultimately, you know, Bitcoin is a blockchain with a very simple scripting language on top. There's not a whole lot of rules you can put in place. Ethereum has got a much wider scope of language that you can do things with, right? And create rules with as you go.
So you can actually trust it.
Well, a lot of smart guys coming out of the
It's like
the Soviet bloc, the East. I don't think he's from Russia, is he?
Yeah, he's from Russia.
Buterin is?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh. He was actually meeting Putin in the last few weeks to discuss the whole thing.
Oh.
I think Putin is embracing Ethereum, surprisingly.
Well, that should help the value.
Yeah. So do you think, have you invested in Ethereum yet?
You know,
I think you should.
Yeah, again, I don't like to get into this is what you should invest in. A lot of people are very hot on Ethereum right now, and a lot of them, even more of them, don't really understand what the hell it does or why it does what it does. A lot of the same guys who are just like, it's all about the blockchain, are like, yeah, Ethereum's, you know, and that's fine. At the end of the day, like, I bitch and moan about it like somebody who's, you know, thought this band was cool way before you guys did. But ultimately, it's great for the entire ecosystem of cryptocurrencies. It's great for Bitcoin that there's interest in it. Yeah. Even if I don't necessarily agree with why they're interested in it, you know, that because they just think it's going up. It's great that they're interested in it, and it's great that they're interested in Ethereum, even if they don't really understand what the hell it does. And that's because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we have run-ups like kind of what's going on right now. A lot of people put money into it because they just see it as some sort of like investment, like the first people to think of this. But then they use it, you know. They start to use it and they start to get it. And yeah, there'll be a bubble and it'll kind of, you know, it'll sort of peak out a little bit and go down, but more people will understand it after that peak. And value-wise, historically, it seems to like kind of peak out and then go down, but never quite down to where it was before. And again, and ultimately, I think that's because you know more people get it now. More people use it. More people are starting to understand how powerful it is.
I think it's not very bad that it's kind of a bubble, because that's where, you know, it will get more people into it. I mean, once you put your money in it, you're forced to learn at least to understand a little bit about it.
Yeah, you're definitely motivated to understand what the hell you're doing once you've got, you know, once you So yeah, you know, I think these run-ups, these bubbles are ultimately a good thing. It gets people involved, and even if they don't understand what Ethereum does, which is, I'm not necessarily like a giant believer in it just yet. Just, you know, just because I think it's, you know, one of the things I like about, you know, a lot of people complain, well, Bitcoin's so simple. It's, you know, there's not, you know, you can't set the rules. So I think its simplicity is, you know, it's a feature, not a bug.
Right.
You know, that's why we've had such relatively few problems with like the Bitcoin protocol itself, like having, you know, being attacked, is because it is simple. Ethereum is much more complex, and you know, if you add any degree of, you know, add 1 degree of complexity to something, especially in software, you add 1 degree of complexity, you're adding 100 degrees of like vulnerability, right? So I think there's a long way to go, even still, with, you know, not being someone who's really on top of it, but I think there's probably a long way to go still with Ethereum before it solves those problems. But it will solve those problems, and it is an amazing idea.
And what do you think is the future of this whole cryptocurrency? Do you think it will be like the to-go currency in the next few years, like pretty much taking over the dollar?
Well, you know, the best I've asked people this a lot before too, and I'll repeat the best answer I've ever. I'll tell you the best answer I've ever got. I always ask people, hey, you know, what's backing up the dollar? You know, some people say, oh, the golden Fort Knox. It's like, no, there's no. That
isn't it trust?
The golden Fort Knox has trust ultimately, but really the best answer I ever got was, you know, as to what's backing up the dollar is, you know, is a dozen aircraft carriers. And that's the truth. A dozen aircraft carriers and some nuclear warheads is what's backing up the dollar. The ability to be able to impose your will on the rest of the world is what backs it up. So it's not going to fully replace it. You know, it's not. You know, a lot of things would have to happen, but the less people trust the U.S., though, I think the less.
But what's going to be the ultimate goal with this whole thing? Because to me, it seems like the whole movement was about, like, you know, being free from this whole bureaucratic and sort of control your own money, you know. And so if you suspect that maybe it won't take over the US dollar, so what's the point?
Well, what do you mean by take over?
Well, I feel like the whole process or the whole movement of cryptocurrency is to actually replace the current financial system.
There's a lot of room. There's a lot of wiggle room between where we're at now and replacing the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, I know.
Completely, you know. And there's a lot of time and a lot of events between where we're at right now with cryptocurrencies and retiring the U.S. dollar.
Yes.
So that's not going to happen in my lifetime, especially if I, keep drinking. But
Cola as well.
yes, but I think it's going to. I think the technological benefits of it will eventually start to, take some of that. Take some of its uses away. It'll take over a lot of the uses of the dollar. It's right now. It's a better way, even for banks, to move money around.
Yeah. The technology itself, right?
The technology itself, right? Yeah. The ability to be able to transfer value quickly and securely without having to trust anyone around. That eliminates so many industries, and it eliminates it greases the wheels of commerce. Banks send more money to each other than anyone else in this world.
Yes.
It would be beneficial for banks to be able to just quickly and securely
do that.
Transfer large amounts of money to each other for almost no cost. That would be a huge benefit to them.
Yeah.
And they know that, but there's obviously other stuff they have to take into consideration before they can do that. But it's the future. I don't know when that future is, and I don't think it's a zero sum kind of thing either. That it has to be like, okay, today we're going to retire the U.S. dollar. But I think
sure.
I think eventually it's, I think we'll probably see it in like a smaller government first at some point. Maybe someone kind of forward thinking, especially if countries keep breaking off from their larger units. I think we'll see it in some smaller ecosystems first.
I like to believe that Bitcoin or say cryptocurrency would take over the internet first. I think the majority of the transaction online will probably in the next couple of years probably be cryptocurrency. Say people buying. Well, obviously it's a nerdy thing to do at the moment. It seems like it's a geeky thing to buy with Bitcoin, like from Amazon or these other retailers. But I think it will reach to a point where most people will be buying with Bitcoin online at least. Pretty much like, think of this, we have in South Africa, for example, not anyone else, not a lot of people buy using the bank cards. A lot of people still don't trust it.
Right.
It's still kind of like a hippie thing to actually use your Visa card or whatever to buy stuff online. So I think the current people that understand that are okay with that will probably move or switch to this current banking system, to Bitcoin or whatever currency that they want to use.
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces to an economy, right? So, so that's why it's moved so slowly. Even though it's such a clearly better idea, that's why it's moved so slowly. Relative slowly to get to the point we're at now. It's hard for me to sell something to you in Bitcoin and just in Bitcoin if I have to, if I have to pay my rent in Rand. It's hard for my landlord to accept that Bitcoin from me when he has to pay for the electricity bill in Rand. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, right? Yeah. So it'll take a long time for the kind of the components to be in place so that everyone can sort of collectively just move entirely in cryptocurrencies. But there are bridges. Companies like Luno. These are what I would call bridges between the sort of the cryptocurrency economy and the quote unquote legacy financial system, which sounds really douchey to say, but like that's kind of what it is, you know.
Yeah.
So where I'm already looking at it as a legacy system. So there's little bridges that are kind of making it easier to transfer between the two, and eventually, I think when enough people have gone back and forth over those bridges and realized, hey, wouldn't it just be easier if I just stayed in the Bitcoin ecosystem?
Yeah.
You know, that's when things really kind of pick up.
So what's the difference between cryptocurrency and this fiat currency that we currently use? Is it the makers of it? Do you think that cryptocurrency was made by, I don't know, is it people who were smarter about currency? Or what would you say is the difference? Or the attitude or the mindset of the creators of it?
I mean, the difference is they had...
Because this is a currency created by engineers, right? Software engineers in some sort.
Ostensibly, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think you know, things improve when you have, you know, when you can stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So we can look back on, you know, 30 years of 40 years of credit card transactions, and we can look back on, you know, 500 years of fractional banking and stuff, and we can say, okay, maybe with our current technology we can do this a little bit better now. I mean, you know, look, you know, credit cards are ultimately at the end of the day an electronic network.
Yeah.
You know, that they're charging us to access in order to be able to communicate payments with each other. Yeah. Well, like, it turns out that, you know, 30 years ago, hey, great idea. 40 years ago, that's some space age shit.
Yeah.
Well, you know, now we all have access to an electronic network that we can use, you know, for free.
So it's incremental.
Right, exactly. All changes are incremental, and I think it's just the right time, and you know, it's the right time and right place and right era for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just an incremental improvement in technology, but I think it's one of those. I think the increments here are a lot longer than, you know, whenever the new smartphone comes out. You know, the increments here, I think, are, you know, on a scale of, you know, a few hundred years.
Yeah, it's like the internet or something like that.
I think, yeah. I mean, it's a giant leap. You know, it's one of those large bumps. So that's why. I don't even remember what we were talking about. God damn, I know how to rant now.
And speaking of cryptocurrency, how troubled was your childhood?
Holy shit. Oh, my mother never loved me. Oh, Papa, can you hear me? When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that, dude.
Well, because this is a question that came up from the previous podcast. Somebody asked, sent me a few questions, saying, "Can you ask that guy about these kind of things?" So the only question I can remember from that list was, how troubled was his childhood? It was just like a bunch of funny shit questions.
Well, it wasn't that bad, you know. My parents got divorced at an early age. Oh, good Lord.
Did you have fun in your childhood?
Yeah, I was a teenage punk rocker.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was a little angry 14-year-old, as I think anyone should have been.
Yeah.
Like,
why were you angry?
Jesus Christ. You know, I don't, because you turn 13, you turn 14, you want to lash out at the world and fuck the man and fuck the system, and you grow a mohawk, and then people make fun of you for the mohawk, and you know, you grew it because you wanted to be tough. And I'll tell you, you know, I'll tell you the moment I stopped being a punk rocker. I remember, and I'll never forget this. I remember like being in my room, and I had a big purple mohawk in Liberty spikes on top of my head. Oh yeah. I was all in, and because I got this curly Jew hair, right? Like there's nothing that straightens this hair out. The only thing I could do was use like glue. I would use actual glue every morning. I would run glue through my hair and then like blow dry it to like fucking like making a hobby horse, like building model airplanes with my hair, just to get over these Jew curls.
In high school, that is.
This is high school, yeah. End of middle school, high school, and you know, whatever, 13, 14, 15 years old. So I remember standing in the mirror one day, and I'm spiking up my hair, and I'm putting all the perfect band names on my leather jacket, and perfectly ripping my boots or my jeans and scuffing up my boots and all that shit. And I remember my mom coming into my room, and she said, honey, no judgment, but why do you dress like this? And I looked around and said, because I don't give a fuck, Mom. I don't give a fuck what people think about me. I'm fucking crazy. I don't give a shit what people think about me. Fuck them. They don't know me. I don't give a fuck what they think. And she goes, oh, okay, that's great. Okay, cool. She's like, well, and no judgment again, but clearly you do give a fuck, because you spend 2 hours every morning making sure your hair is perfectly spiked. Yeah. And if you clearly do give a fuck what they think about you. Yeah. And I kind of looked at her, and I knew immediately that she was absolutely fucking right. And that was it. That was the end of my punk rock era right there. I was like, God damn it, my shit, just talked me out of it. So
shit, that was a terrible moment, right?
What was that?
It was a terrible moment.
That's
the punk rocker.
Yeah, that's a watershed moment.
You felt this high and it just went all the way low.
That was it. Now I'm just into the gayest disco possible.
So okay, so what mode did you enter after the punk rock?
Oh, I think I had my 3-month, death metal moment, and lots of LSD.
And the teachers liked you with that mode?
Yeah. Oh, I think my teachers love me. But then, I always think people like me. I'm often wrong. Yeah. But, I think my teachers were pretty big fans. I think I'm friends with a few of them on Facebook, even.
Oh. And, they're still alive.
What's that?
Are they still alive?
Yeah, how old do you think I am? Jesus Christ. Holy shit.
And what is it? You never get fired?
I never get fined?
Fired?
Fired? Oh, I've been fired from lots of jobs.
No, I mean, is it? From high school as well?
Oh, I dropped out of high school.
You dropped out?
Yeah.
And what happened after that?
I dropped out of high school, and I went to work for this company that was paying me an inordinate amount of money for doing very little work.
What kind of work?
Ostensibly network engineering, but...
how old were you by then?
I was 17.
Okay, where did you learn that shit?
Sitting around the house being a dork,
That's though, like a punk rock.
Downloading shit on the internet.
A punk rocker with with spiked hair and glue, doing some engineering. That's kind of unrelated.
Yeah, I mean, I think in lieu of being a punk rocker, I decided to be a computer nerd. So which is much more profitable generally than being a punk rocker. But yeah, so I went to work for this company that was ostensibly doing network engineering for them, but it turns out that they were actually bank robbers.
Really?
Yeah, it turns out they were bank robbers, and the company I was working for was just a way of laundering money. And then shout out to Matt Fuller, Nick Decay, and then I went to a series of other tech jobs. Yeah, it's a long story. I don't even know. And then we started doing adult porn stuff in 1999.
Okay.
And that's when things at least got interesting.
Yeah. What was your role in the adult porn?
I was involved with
The actor?
No, I was not. I am not the talent. I am no one's porn talent. No, we started I got involved with a site called Consumption Junction.
Is it Consumption Junction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah. But it's not there anymore, is it?
No, it's not. Sold that a number of years ago.
Right.
But it was fun. We ran it for about 8-9 years, and it was just kind of fucked up videos and Japanese girls pooping on themselves or each other, and I used to kind of write stuff on it. I used to write articles on it every day, which are now called blogs, I guess. And it's funny kind of seeing some of these Instagram stuff, like the Fat Jewish and these all these Instagram accounts that basically just document these guys getting drunk and saying horrible things, and sending around memes, which is exactly what Consumption Junction was, which is guys getting drunk, doing weird things, sending around, weird pictures to each other, and in a weird way, I think we were kind of ahead of our time with that one. But yeah, we did that for a while, and then I don't know. Do I need to keep going from here?
No.
All right, cool.
Cool. I think I'm gonna stop it here.
Thank God.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No. What's going on with you? Can we get on this Tinder? Now can we see what's going on here?
No.
Please. The people need to know. Gray, the people demand. Information wants to be free.
Yeah, absolutely.
See? Do you see how I wrapped all that up nicely?
Yeah.
That's a professional right there.
That's why I had to talk about BitTorrent. Information has to be free.
Yes. Let's free your Tinder messages right now.
No,
just read the first one on there, because I know you got like a list, dude. Just read the first one, and then let us figure it out from there. Just read the last message you got, and then let our imaginations go wild from there.
Okay.
Are you ready?
No, the thing is, okay. It says, ha ha ha. I don't actually give out my number to people, but you're cute, so my number is blah blah blah. blah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah?
I am confirming that's exactly what that says. Let me see what she looks like.
I'm not.
Oh my God! Oh my God, she's adorable.
Well, I don't know.
She's 19. I feel like I might have broken a law just looking at that, but
yeah.
Good for you, though. God bless.
I don't really check Tinder. That's the thing. So this is the only time that I actually have checked in the last few months.
Yeah.
You want to have it? You can just.
I'll do it. Yeah, can I just take your pictures?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Ain't they gonna be surprised when I walk in the door?
I did some experiments with it, and have some exciting data that I can share with people at a later podcast if they want to.
Okay, yeah, I think that'd be a great podcast.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I would thumbs up that one.
Yeah. Cool. Let's end it there.
All right, sounds good. That's it. Thanks so much, Gray. Always a treat. Go to cryptocurrency.net.
Oh yeah. What is it all about?
We're working on this little call it Hacker News for cryptocurrency. So just links and places to learn about interesting, good articles about cryptocurrency, stuff like that.
Right.
Cryptocurrency.net. What do you think of it, Jay?
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
But you just look to some people, when they hear the word hacker, they're always associated with something negative. So just it's pretty much like a Reddit